Hello, hello, and welcome. It's Wednesday and time for live Q&A. And I'm sorry I missed last week. I was out with a flu. And I'm still a little bit affected by it. So if my voice is a little out of practice or not on board with me, that's the reason. So today I am going to talk about a topic that is really dear to my heart. It is probably the thing that brought me into this work. And it is about healing trauma and the connection between trauma and fatigue. And so the question is, why is trauma relevant to the journey of healing fatigue? And why do trauma healing at all? So if this is a question that you have ever asked yourself, I think it's also relevant to ask oneself, why not? Why not do trauma healing? And the reason why that question also is important is because if we sit with that question, the answers to that question will give us reasons and important information to what is keeping us back from actually doing the work. And that could be, it's too expensive. I'm not sure it's going to work. What if I pay all this money and nothing happens? And there might be all kinds of different reasons. And if you're interested in receiving support in taking care of those answers, let me know. Send me a message and we can talk about that. Or maybe that's a topic for another Q&A. We'll see. So to answer the question, why do healing trauma? Why heal trauma, period? And to answer that question, I am going to refer to the trauma expert, Peter Levine. He's this amazing human being that has created a trauma, I think you could call it a therapy form, called somatic experiencing. And the way he talks about it is that if you imagine us humans as the banks of a river, and I've talked about this before, and the river flowing between the banks is the life force. It's the life energy. Some people call it ki, some call it prana, some call it the kundalini energy, whatever you want to call it. It's what makes us feel alive. It is what makes us breathe, what makes the heart beat. And when we're born, those riverbanks are wide. There is a lot of energy flowing through there. But what happens as we go through life and we have traumatic experiences happen to us, those banks start moving towards each other. They become closer and closer. And the more we experience trauma, the less space there is for that life force, the life energy to flow through. And when there is a lot of energy flowing through, and this is my interpretation, it can be overwhelming because there's no space for it to flow through there. So you will have a flood, right? And that can be very overwhelming. So what trauma healing does is it supports the expansion between the banks of the river. So there is more space for life to flow through us. There is more space for us to hold the challenges in life. There's more space for joy. There's more space for creativity. There's more space for bliss. There's more space for all kinds of experiences. in life. And so what does that mean practically? So I'm going to share some of my personal experiences so that you can get a grip of what this actually means, how healing trauma can actually change our lives. So when I was in the midst of chronic fatigue, and I had this experience where I remembered a very traumatic experience from my childhood. And this is something I haven't talked about very much, and I might do it one day, but I'm not quite there yet. But when I remembered that experience, I went into PTSD. I had vivid images, flashbacks. I had a lot of trouble sleeping, a lot more than I usually had. And I had a really hard time controlling my emotions. So I would feel really angry. I had a hard time controlling that. I would lash out at my husband and my children. And this was the banks of the river, very, very, very tight. There was not much space for life to flow through there. And when it flowed, it was overwhelming, just overwhelming, again and again and again and again. And it took me a while to understand, first of all, what trauma was. That is one of this experience was what led me into the world of trauma, because I wanted to understand what was going on with me, what was happening with me. So I started to study trauma. And after a while, I realized that there were people here in Sweden working with somatic experiencing. And I started working with a practitioner. Now, I worked with 2 somatic experiencing practitioners over the past, let me see, is it maybe 4, 5 years? 4 years. I can't really remember. Me and remembering dates and times isn't always super easy for me, but that doesn't really matter. I've done a lot of somatic experiencing work. And so to put that into context, have that experience of me lashing out towards my husband in anger, feeling that surge of anger and lashing out at him and not being able to control that. I had this experience this past Sunday where I felt triggers in me. I felt all the emotions bubbling up inside of me. And I noticed, okay, this is it, right? Because that's what happens when we have trauma. We get triggered. And how we get triggered can be different. One of the ways I get triggered is that I get really irritated. I get really angry. And so I felt that bubbling up inside of me. And instead of lashing out towards my husband and my son, who was with me then, in the way that I did 4 or 5 years ago, I can't say that I didn't lash out at all, because I let some of it out. But I was able to notice that, oh, okay, so this is going on. And I was able to take a step back and feel, what do I need right now? And so what I needed was to leave the situation and go sit by myself somewhere else. And that's what I did. And I was able to sit with my emotions. I cried. I was able to let some of it out. And after that, I was able to have normal conversations with my son and my husband. And this would never have been possible if I hadn't done all this trauma healing. This is one of the effects. Another thing is that I used to get quite stressed out about things. I could get stressed out about not being late to things or missing things, or stressed out over that we hadn't cleaned our home, we hadn't done the dishes, that it was whatever, all kinds of things. And today, I can see those things. I can recognize, okay, so we haven't done the dishes and it looks like shit. And I can notice that, yeah, I'm not too fond of it. I would love for it to be clean, but it wouldn't be this intense emotion for me. So both of these examples are how I react differently when I get triggered. And this is one part of it. The other part of it is how much more space there is for all the positive emotions, all the positive experiences in life. The reason why I do this around positive is because I don't believe that there are positive or negative emotions. But that's another discussion, and I've actually made a post on Instagram around that. If you're interested, you can check that out. But there is more space for that. I feel much more peace within myself. I feel more excitement around things that we're going to do, around things that I have. For instance, this weekend I'm going to Berlin, and I am so excited about doing that trip. And I feel quite calm about the actual journey. I have more access to feeling love for my husband, more love for my children. I have more patience with my in-laws. I have more patience for all kinds of different situations. And I have more access to my creativity. I paint a lot more. I do knitting a lot more. And so these are some of the examples for me. So I invite you to consider these two questions. Why not do trauma healing? If you don't do anything, what will your life continue to be like? And here there are two more questions. One is, what is the worst thing about that? And the other question is actually, what are you gaining by that? And I've talked about this before also. What are we gaining by staying where we're at? Because there is something that we're gaining, and otherwise we wouldn't be there, right? And the next question is, what would you gain? What would it give you to imagine that you've done this healing work? What would that give you? What would be the best thing about having done the healing, about being able to do all these things that you're longing to do, about having the ability to book things in your calendar and knowing that you're probably going to be able to do it, that you will have the energy for it, that you can feel joy about it, that you have patience, that you have creativity, you have the ability to feel pleasure, and that life feels like something good. And of course there will be challenges, but what would be the best thing about all of that? Send me a DM or let me know in the comments what your answers to those questions are. I would love to hear that. And if you have any other questions, you're also welcome to contact me. And if you want to know more about this and more about a course that I'm creating around how to do some of this healing work on your own, be sure to sign up to my newsletter so that you can make sure that you get information around when I release the course later on this spring. And you can sign up to my newsletter in the link in my bio. So we're going to finish this off with 3 deep breaths. And I invite you to just check with yourself if you want to soften the gaze or close your eyes. Maybe put your hands on your body, wherever it feels good. And take a deep breath in. And breathing out with a sigh. Breathing in deep into your lower belly. And breathing out with a sigh, imagining that you're letting go whatever needs to be let go of. And taking a deep breath in. And breathing out. Okay, love. Thank you for being here and thank you for listening. Mwah.